Hello everyone. And if you're watching this one will be on YouTube. Um, I, this is an astrology conversation, so you can come and join this class forum on Soul Tribe online if you would like to. It's open to anyone really. Um, yeah, but. So what we're doing at the moment is we're looking at the first four goddess asteroids. We've done series. We're in the middle of Pallas Athena, and then we're going to do Juno and Vesta. Those were the first four to be discovered, and they're like the foundation of all the other goddess asteroids as well, if you like, as some sort of permutation of these four. Um, so they're really important. And actually, now we're in this contemplation together, feeling the power of it. I'm really reminded because I've been, I felt like grabbed by these goddess asteroids in my late 20s, and they've never let me go, and they've really shaped my life a lot. And I really feel their power to help us be different and break our karmic patterns. That's what I think they really help us do by giving us a kind of clear archetype. We can look at the zodiac sign where our Pallas Athena is. So, for example, mine's in Pisces, it's a water sign. And they say that Pallas Athena is like the Bodhisattva energy. So that's something I always try and sort of hold that bodhisattva kind of consciousness. So whatever the element, the sign of the zodiac, and then what we're doing, which I think will um, be, which is really powerful because it gives us actually a really simple way of doing it through the shadow, the gift, and the siddhi. So this week we're in the gift. It was a very rich conversation in the shadow last week. I had a lot to say about that. So, so onwards and upwards into the gift. Okay, so yeah, I'm just seeing messages there. So let's go into the presentation first of all. Um, okay, so let me press present. Okay, so Pallas Athena, the gift. Woman can and will shape the future. So Pallas Athena she is about the story of women finding their power and their sovereignty. And definitely Pallas Athena relates to women as leaders. So maybe in community or politically, she's a great one, but whether she's going to help women depends on whether she's in the shadow or the gift. That's in my interpretation anyway, because I think a leader like Margaret Thatcher, who was a strong Pallas Athena archetype, yet what she wanted to do was be part of the male conservative world. She had no interest really in women's rights. And just because you're female doesn't mean you are interested in furthering women's rights. So this is the whole story of Pallas, that she has this kind of turnaround from maybe being quite scathing, even quite damaging to other females, to actually being like a sister for the sisters. And this is what we need in our world because so many political revolutions or whatever, or even things in community fail when women start to kind of turn on each other and are manipulated by the patriarchy. And it's quite easy for us to fall into that. So, Pallas Athena appeared to me this week in the form of a freedom fighter from the the 1940s, Anna Popovich. And there is a film about her, which I wasn't able to watch from the UK, but the film's called Alive. There's quite a few films called Alive. So um, this one, she was actually alive when she made it. And wow, I mean, I've just read some of her life, and this woman, Orla Gordinier, who um, painted this Pallas Athena on the left, was inspired by Anna Popovich. And I really love this painting of Pallas Athena with the owl of wisdom. The berries seem to speak to me of maturity. And her face has this real kind of innocence and openness actually about it. So she's a very interesting Pallas Athena to me because she's not I'm fighting. She's more of I am here in my presence and my authority. I have my owl, I have my berries, and this is how it is. And when we have Pallas Athena inside us strong, that we can just stand in our authority and not be battered by, often even if it's like a patriarchal energy or something that wants to kind of oppress us, people who don't listen, people who are not taking care. Um, so it feels unjust what they're doing. Um, and we had quite a rich conversation last week about anger or not anger. And I've been thinking about that a lot because it does feel like, sometimes you only get what you want by being angry. And yet the impact of anger can be so profound that it kind of really burns bridges and stuff. So yeah, I mean, I still kind of feel like there's a place for anger, definitely, but I don't like losing my temper because it feels like I've lost control. So this Pallas Athena here in Orla's picture, she's totally in control. and and Anna was actually probably less in control because she had a really difficult life. She was arrested firstly during the Russian invasion of Ukraine. This is, in the before the Second World War. Um, and and she was tortured and stuff, but they let her go eventually. But then the Bolsheviks actually, so you have the Russian Revolution, you'd think, okay, everything's changed in Russia. Maybe the Bolsheviks won't be as horrible or whatever. Well, they were. So they killed her mother, her child died, I think, as well. But she had a really hard time, but she lived to actually a ripe old age and became a lifelong freedom fighter. I don't even think she really wanted to be a freedom fighter, but she fell in love with a freedom fighter, and so many things happened to her, like her mother being tortured and killed, and her mother never gave up her name or her brother's name to the Bolsheviks, and she was killed for it. I mean, she might have been killed anyway, but her mother was tremendously brave to endure that. So there's something about Pallas Athena is this endurance of difficulty and and maybe even the endurance of difficulty brings out the fighter in us, the freedom fighter. And freedom fighter, I think, is a nice combination of words because if I'm going to fight, it's going to be for freedom. I'm not going to fight to hurt someone. I'm not going to fight to better my position over someone else, but I will fight for freedom. So, my own freedom and other people's freedom. So yeah, it was interesting that this piece of art came along. Okay, so this is the gifts of Pallas Athena as I see it. So this is an interesting one because I read another thing this week about Pallas. Someone asked last week, why is she called Pallas Athena? Now, apparently Pallas was a friend of hers that she killed, and then she took her name, um, almost like to say sorry and to honor her. And as we talked about last week, how she took Medusa on her shield. And I'd like to see this at its best as Pallas actually integrating her mistakes. So the woman that she has wronged, she recognizes as now part of her. One becomes her name, the other one becomes her shield of protection. And I think this is quite a nice contemplation that any person we've ever hurt, especially any woman we can think about, um, how can we integrate that by actually making those women part of ourselves in some way? Because, of course, they are part of ourselves if we didn't have a mind and we were in unitary consciousness, if we were living on magic mushrooms, we would realize that everyone is part of us. Um, so yeah, it's kind of an interesting contemplation to have. So another gift of Pallas Athena is wisdom, which is represented by the owl. So wisdom is associated with gene key 48, but wisdom is often seen as it's not knowledge, it's not what you can learn and integrate as knowledge. Wisdom is it's usually seen as something feminine, Sophia. It's like the consciousness of unitary consciousness is wisdom. That's sort of how I would see it. Wise people come from a place of unitary consciousness and love. And that's kind of what represents wise wisdom. Um, so I've put here the gifts as assertiveness and confidence without aggression. So I think we can demarcate this that if we are enraged and aggressive, we're in a really primal state of being, and it's not to say it's bad or it's wrong because it's part of being human, but I wouldn't say it's a gift. So when we talk about the gift, is this ability to get what we want through um, through really being in our power and speaking very clearly and in a way that people can't ignore. And that's an art, really. And I feel like I've been learning that art my whole life. And I'm still learning it. And I'm sure we all are because it works with certain people. And then you meet people who are just like really rude and really don't listen to people. And then it all kind of falls apart a bit. But the idea is that we would be able to do that with anyone. Um, so other gifts, strategy, being able to see from above, maybe like the owl sees from above. Decisiveness, when you see, you're able to take action. The ability to outwit the enemy. And that means you can't be too soft. You can't be like, oh, I don't know if I want to do that. Maybe I want to not outwit the enemy. Maybe I'll just pretend they don't exist or whatever. No, Pallas Athena is like, right, this is my strategy, I'm taking action, and if I can outwit the enemy, then I will. Um, yeah, I've been reading some interesting female trickster stories this week, and women who managed to stay alive in situations where they may have been raped or they may have been killed. Um, by outwitting the enemy. So it's very useful to have that kind of skill. And I remembered actually reading it that once as a teenager, I did actually do this very instinctively with a male I felt was dangerous and could have raped me. And I just started chatting to him. Da, 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 da. Could you take me here? And he did. And I was talking to Adam about it, and he was saying, well, yes, that would work because the predatory male wants the female to feel fear. That is what they want. And this is what feeds their aggression and their lust. So if they're met with friendliness, then it immediately, you might say in an alchemical in a chemistry way, could dissolve the the energy of what they're feeling. And I don't want to say that it could happen to everyone because maybe it doesn't, it's a kind of a supposition really, but I did see it happen in this one situation when I was only about 14. So it was really quite it was very instinctual. I didn't think about it, but some part of me switched on that knew how to outwit this man. And so that was like, oh wow, that is inside us, that ability. But we need to allow that ability as well and not be too nicey nice about everything. And then being collective, influential in the collective story. So if you remember in the first session, I spoke about the goddess asteroids being the rainbow bridge between Mars, our taking action, and Jupiter, the first collective planet. So the goddess asteroids move us from quite a personal space and our own suffering, our own little world, into this bigger world of influencing the collective. Then we have creating from the mind. So Pallas Athena doesn't have children, and whether you have children or not, you can still create from the mind. Oh, hang on a sec. And then leadership and justice. Okay. So here's a bit of the astronomy. Pallas Athena was discovered on the 28th of March, 1802 in Bremen by Heinrich Olbers. And he was one of what were called this whole group of European astronomers. They called themselves the Celestial Police. And I don't know too much about them, but the fact they called themselves the Celestial Police is just like they felt they had some kind of ownership over the heavens. And, it's kind of like, I just have to laugh really, because it's that whole sort of energy of, that patriarchal arrogance that thinks that, you know, humans own everything. So, interesting thing about Pallas Athena is what's called an inclination. So, this is a flat inclination, that's a steep inclination. So, this body is traveling like at the steep inclination of 34.8 degrees. And because of this, no spaceship has ever been able to land on Pallas Athena. And I thought that was kind of an interesting metaphor for this thing about being kind of cunning, like hard to catch. Um, hard to pin down. You know, if you're using your strategy and you're outwitting the enemy, then actually being a person who can't be landed on too easily feels like quite a good thing. I'm going to practice it anyway, traveling at a steep inclination and being hard to catch. And her orbit is 4.61 years, so very similar to Ceres. So this white line here, this is Pallas Athena. The purple one is Jupiter, and the red one is Mars. So you can see she's got quite an elliptical orbit as well. So she's kind of verging on being like a centaur, actually, with that elliptical orbit. Okay, so the discovery of Pallas Athena. Um, Now, I went through all these once. I did a course with Bella, who some of you might know, and we went through the discovery of all these goddess asteroids, and we'll probably hit a couple more, but um, quite a few of them were discovered at 29 degrees Virgo. And it's a significant place for the discovery of asteroids, I feel, because Virgo is the sign of the goddess. And a lot of these new asteroids are given esoteric rulership of Virgo. And the last sign of any sign of the zodiac is it's most like you've learned all the lessons of the sign by the time you reach the last part of the zodiac. So 29 degrees is a really interesting place, I think. Now I've put Gene Key 50. I don't know if I'm right about that, actually. I think Gene Key 50 might be the beginning of Scorpio. I think I've done that wrong. But what I haven't done wrong is let's look at what is correct in this. Um, so there she is at 29 degrees Scorpio, and you can see that she's just, if everything's traveling anti-clockwise, I'll open this a little bit. Around the 15th of March, there's a Venus star point, a Venus Sun conjunction, and Pallas is almost conjunct Uranus on that day and has moved on. And you can see she's almost conjunct Ceres there and the South Node. Okay, and here you've got Venus Sun conjunction, and the exact conjunction was on the 15th of March. So that's kind of, I think, quite interesting. First of all, you've got Pallas conjunct Uranus, the liberator, and you've got a Venus star point, uh, and which was in Pisces, actually, it was in the sign before. And then you have the discovery of Pallas Athena a couple of weeks later. So it's almost like a preparation energy opening, like the flower opening. And then we have Pallas Athena is born into our consciousness. And we also have Saturn Jupiter conjunction there as well. So an interesting time. So this is 1802. And it's about a year and 2 months after Ceres is discovered. So that gives you a sense of how much space there is in the asteroid belt. Yeah, that it takes another full 2 years and a bit to actually discover another one of these bodies. They probably didn't have as good equipment as we do now because they've discovered a lot more now, haven't they? So, okay. Is that the last? That might actually be the last one. Okay, so I'll just share a little bit about I've been concentrating on Gene Key 63, which is actually my design placement for Pallas Athena. My natal is the 55, so freedom is all there in the background. So when I said the one thing I'll fight for is freedom, it's true. I will fight for freedom. So Pallas Athena feels very strong in the 55. Um, so where I was going last week, though, was from the shadow of doubt, and especially self-doubt that manifests as suspicion, and into the gift of inquiry. So this has been like such a huge one because I almost feel like the ability to bend reality. Well, I have felt the ability to bend reality with Pallas Athena very strongly, actually, like to change the timeline by moving out of suspicion and doubt into inquiry. So I love inquiry because it's been a guiding philosophy for a lot of years now to not be over, like when I was a teenager in my 20s, I was very zealous, actually, like a freedom fighter, but very politically fixed in how I saw things. And one of the ways the universe has really challenged me is to be open-minded. So I'd say this has happened with religion is one thing, especially Christianity. I was, hated Christianity. And now I'm like, oh, I love Jesus. He's my friend. So there's been like a huge kind of shift on that. And then just to share like one story, I remember going on holiday to South Africa and I'd booked a bed and breakfast. And when I lived in South Africa, I really hated the police and the army. I grew up under apartheid and they were vicious. They were really vicious people. And anyway, it turned out that this accommodation was right next to an army base. And it was post-apartheid and ended up in this bar drinking with all these like high up military commanders under, they were all Afrikaans, under Mandela's new South Africa. And it was amazing to meet them. They'd really put all their passion into this new South Africa, from being maybe some of the most kind of, maybe not them personally, but the army were the bastion of apartheid and racism. And then here they were, it was really humbling. That's the word I'll use. And, I'd made the judgment about what these people were about, and I was totally wrong in that. And so yeah, the universe over the years has humbled me greatly in many ways, to the point where I will never say I'm totally right because yeah, every time I say that, like something happens that shows me the gray area that I'm not right. I might be partially right. Um, and yeah, and this one moves into truth as the city. So that's going to be interesting for next week. But yeah, this open-mindedness, seeing everything with open-mindedness and curiosity. And when things feel challenging, rather than going into this like contracted, suspicious state, just trying to ask, well, what is actually happening? What karma is playing out here? And how can I use my strategy, my action, my clarity to actually make a new story here? The story doesn't have to unfold the same way again. There's always something that we can do to change the dynamic. And maybe it's only that we change how we feel about it. And that's the only thing that can change. But often, having made the change, how I can sort of transmute how I'm feeling about it, then the course can actually bend in a different direction. If I stay entrenched in fear and closeness, then it's almost like my dynamic powerfully creates the problem that I'm seeing approach, you know. Yeah, so this is a really good key, I think, for Pallas Athena, because she is all about logic, and the 63rd gene key is all about logic. Okay, but there's lots of other gene keys that she's really good in. The 55 is another one, freedom. So I'm gonna stop the recording now, and we will share about Pallas Athena in your gene key, and you can reflect on the inquiry thing as well if you'd like to. But I'm interested to hear like how you've experienced her energy through your specific gene keys. Okay, I'm going to stop. There you go.